A couple of things right off the bat. I know I said this was going to come immediately after the previous review, but my weekend was kind of booked with social interactions and I had to switch gears to something a bit quicker to edit. Sorry about the misdirect. Also, sorry for how goddamn boring I sounded in the last recording. I recorded after a few straight days of 5 to 6 hour long Smite sessions just to get 0 to level 60 prestige on the battle pass, and my voice was shot. Now, for the main event. If you've ever seen one of my Smite uploads, you probably noted what sounded like a giggling little c*** having a good time playing Smite. If that is the case, then you only started watching recently, which, thanks for that by the way. I have had a festering hatred of this game for a long time, one that has actively pushed me to uninstall the game 4 times. Well, if you hate the game so much, why do you keep reinstalling it? Ugh. Look, I don't hate Smite, I hate parts of Smite. The game as a whole is genuinely fun and engaging and has that highly addictive, just one more game nature that makes these free-to-play style games work. Assuming, you like MOBAs. Today, I'm going to tell you what it is about this game that induces a level of rage in me that is reserved only for live streams and the parts I cut out of videos. Spoiler alert, it's the community. It's always the community. The Smite community is a malignant cancer latched very tightly to the core of an otherwise fun game. Like I mentioned in previous videos, Smite is relatively simple. The problem is that the more you play it, the more complex it gets until you reach the threshold where it breaks off into a competitive game, and it does this rather quickly. Originally, it did not take long to rank up and gain access to Conquest, as it only required you to be level 10, but now they have recently altered that and made the most competitive game mode, and the one that takes the most skill to play, available at level 1. God damn it, Hi-Rez. Conquest is where the truly cancerous asshats start coming out of the woodwork and render the mode unplayable 90% of the time. Add that along with all the noobs that can now just kind of fill in the slots of the game, and the game just doesn't work. This would not seem like an issue, as most people have some idea of this mythical thing called skill-based matchmaking. Hi-Rez devs hear those 3 words and it sends them into a blind rage of the go f*** yourself nature. The only skill-based matchmaking that exists in Smite is behind the ranked modes, unlocked at level 30. For everything else, it is group-based. If you team up with someone, you're f***ed, because it does not matter the level of skill you or your friends have, you are going to get paired with the most brain-dead and incompetent Smite can find while facing off against a 5-man squad with their own callouts and diamond everything. And see, you started off by talking about the community being cancer, and have shifted to blaming the devs. Oh, don't worry, bitch. I'm getting there. The reason I started by explaining all of that was to show you how we get to the next part of player division. What I mean is that you have 4 types of players in Smite. Mid to high tiered casuals, like me and Zero. Potatoes, more on them in a minute. High skill players, like that one guy Kurt. And the low skill, unobservant, team blaming assholes. The ones that run headfirst in the entire enemy team while you and the rest of the team are a mile away, and then blame the rest of the team for their performance. Yeah, those guys. I'll admit, I make some really bad dives and get surrounded by the enemy and die, but I usually just bitch at Zero for not having my back and then shortly accept that it was my up. What I do not do is go into the chat and start spamming messages about how great I am and how the rest of the team is. Those guys? The ones that are go 2-9 with their Diamond 3 Poseidon? Total hypothetical situation that I'm drawing on, I swear. The main issue is that it only takes one of these assholes to ruin an entire game, and really drag down the experience of Smite. Problem is, there's a ton of them. I want to give you guys the definition of a potato, really quick. Potato. Noun. A player in a team-based game who, with the exception of acting as a meat shield, serves as a useless anchor and often costs their team the game. Alternatively, a player with garbage tier internet that causes tremendous lag for all players before ultimately disconnecting and not returning to the game. What? That's what it says in Webster's dictionary. These people are hardly the worst part of Smite, but they are quite prevalent. Smite being free to play means that access to the game is open to anybody that has a computer or game console, as it is a cross-platform, unlike other MOBAs. But this does allow a lot of people to play, and it's inevitable that some of them will have CenturyLink or Cox as an internet provider. Potatoes don't always ruin the game, and oftentimes actually make the victories with that kind of handicap more rewarding. So even though I bitch at them and yell the cursed potato into the night, I only put them as the 5th worst thing about Smite. Why is the word cross-platform still on the screen? Oh right! Cross-platform play f***ing sucks! I play Smite on PS4, and that is okay. The controls are a tad stiff, and turning accurately still has its issues, but it is a solid experience. It is supposedly the same for Xbox, but I can only take that from third parties. What I can tell you is that trying to play Smite on the Switch is a f***ing nightmare of latency issues. Then there is PC. Of course, being one of those mouse and keyboard types will automatically make you better with 8 of the 10 best gods in the game, as you need snappy and swift movements to play someone like Euler or Morgan. I'm not saying that playing on PC instantly makes you better than someone on console, but what I am saying is that the skill divide between mid and high tier players on console and PC is an astronomical f***ing gap. Well, and see, if you don't want to get poked on by PC players, you can just turn off cross-platform play. No, bitch. It doesn't work like that. Zero and I have cross-platform play disabled for 90% of our play sessions, and the lobbies are still flooded with non-PlayStation players. This is one of those things that I don't know why Hi-Rez continues to overlook it in matchmaking. Oh wait, I do. They don't give a f***. You know how I know they don't give a f***? Because you have to turn on cross-platform play to play ranked matches. Why? I keep calling out the developers of the game for a lot of issues, which is fair to do, as they are highly active in the game's upkeep as the patches and updates come frequently. The highly unstable servers play a huge part in f***ing up the game, but the player base is so massive and coming from a multitude of platforms that I can only fault them for it so much. What I can fault them for is that Hi-Rez, as I mentioned in the last video, likes its some visual design, but god do they hate the game itself and the gameplay. Couple of nitpicky things, and then I'm going to put a pretty massive card on the table. Nitpicks. You can't toggle autocasting on controller. You have basically no good options for adjusting the HUD that takes up 70% of the screen. Applause is still a thing. Useful information gets buried in particle effects. You buffed, then nerfed again the Soul Leader 4 patches in a row. Ymir is supposed to be a guardian. Matchmaking queues randomly decide not to queue you, and oh yeah, applause is still a thing. Okay, maybe a couple was inaccurate, but you get the point. Now, the massive card is a guy named Jerry. Jerry works at Hi-Rez and has a great character idea. Hey guys, I just came up with a new character idea. Alright Jerry, let's hear it. So he's a guardian with has super high defensive stats and a ton of health. Okay, sounds about right. In his kit he has a massive 2-hit slow and root combo that does full damage. Okay, so that's his 1 and 2 abilities. Nope, just his 1. His 2 is a cone that inflicts a fear status on an enemy. Kind of like Hades? Yes, but this also does full damage. Then his 3 is a massive dash that stuns and pushes. Does it also do damage? Of course. And what about his ultimate? He turns gigantic and gains a new set of moves. That seems reasonable. While gaining a whole extra third of his maximum health, damage mitigation, power, and his new moves are a massive AoE damage, a knockup, and a burst radio lifesteal that heals nearby allies. For how long? 16 seconds. Dear God, Jerry. That is the greatest thing I've ever heard of! Start development now! Sadly, with some exaggeration, this is a thing that happened. Cthulhu was released and was the most broken god in the entire game for 2 weeks. If you didn't have a Cthulhu on your team, you lost. After those first 2 weeks, they issued an update that nerfed him by lowering his tankiness. Okay. They removed the damage mitigation from his transformation and lowered the heal. He was still super broken, as now everyone just built damage on him. Then another patch came, and lowered his ultimate time. And even more defensive stuff. Jesus Christ, Hi-Rez, if you wanted to make him a mage, just make him a f***ing mage. Okay, I'm gonna pause from the review for just a moment to throw this out there. When Hi-Rez does rework or rebalance Cthulhu and actually make him a mage, like they did with Hades, just know, I called it. Now, back to the video. You might be thinking that this is just an outlier and I'm being selective in my no bitch. Not being selective. This happens with every new god and new item. It would be one thing if they released something, realized it was broken, then nerfed it. But they go through an entire carousel of release, nerf, buff, and nerf with everything. It's clear that nobody at Hi-Rez actually plays their own game. God, I wish they would though. A lot of changes would be made in a few weeks if they did. So I teased at the end of the last video my actual thoughts on god balancing in Smite. While Cthulhu is a glaring example of damned if you do and don't, so many other gods are also in the swing of nerfing and buffing with every patch. As for the gods themselves, I would be willing to say that about 10 of them in the hands of somebody with any level of competence are OP as f***. Then you have about 90-ish gods that are genuinely fine where they are and only fluctuate with item changes. Except for Bellona and Scylla. They're perfect just the way they are. Then you have the low tier trash. They aren't all terrible, and in the hands of competent players, they can be truly devastating. But typically, you pray you don't have them on your team because you know they're about to suck so hard a black hole is going to engulf the battlefield. As it took me weeks to get these reviews done and rewritten about a dozen times, our time playing Smite has reached a temporary hiatus to avoid reaching that point of vehement hatred that leads to uninstalling. But I want to point out that just the other day, Hi-Rez announced a long overdue Loki rework that will finally take him out of the low tier trash and restore him to the butt-plunging terror that he was 4 years ago. Thank God we are not playing Smite for the next month. So this video is way longer than I expected it to be, but I had a lot to say about Smite. If you have any comments or thoughts about things I should have mentioned, please let me know down in the comments. If you want to be notified the next time I make a fair review, be sure to subscribe and ignore that bell. Hopefully it won't take me another 3 years to do a fair review, but don't quote me on that. For now, I have been NC, and this has been a fair review.